10-year-old Daniel walked slowly, dragging his feet. His navy blue school uniform was faded, his sandals had one broken strap, and his eyes were red. His lips trembled, and tears rolled down his dusty cheeks. Earlier that morning, he had gone to school with hope in his heart, even though he knew his school fees had not been paid. It was the 3rd week since resumption, and he had managed to stay unnoticed, sitting quietly in class and hoping nobody would call his name. But today, his luck ran out. "Daniel Okoye!" the headmistress, Madame Uche, had called out loudly during morning assembly. "You have been warned. Go home. Until your mother pays your fees, don't come back." His classmates had looked at him with pity. Some whispered, others laughed. Daniel didn't say a word. He just picked up his bag and walked out of the school gate. His heart felt heavy. Now, as he reached the corner of the street where their small one-room house stood, he wiped his face with his sleeve. His mother, simply known as Mama Dan, was already seated on her stool, selling pepper and tomatoes in front of the house. Her face was beautiful but tired. Her hands were stained with tomato juice from sorting the produce. She looked up and saw her son approaching. "Daliel, why are you back home by this time?" she asked, standing up quickly. "What happened?" Daniel couldn't speak. He burst into fresh tears and ran into her arms. She dropped the bowl of pepper and hugged him tightly. "Talk to me, my son. What is it?" "Mummy," he sniffed. "They sent me away again. Madame Uche said I shouldn't come back unless we pay the school fees." Mama Dan closed her eyes. Her lips trembled, but she didn't want to cry in front of her son. "I'm tired, Mummy," he continued. "I want to go to school like my friends, but they always send me away, always." She held his face in her hands and kissed his forehead. "You will go back to school, Dan. I promise you, my son. I don't know how, but I will make sure you do." "But we don't have money," he whispered. "I will find a way," she replied, standing up slowly. As she looked at the few tomatoes and peppers on her table, her eyes scanned their compound. Her husband, Daniel's father, had died 3 years back. Since then, she had struggled to raise Daniel alone. She sold pepper, tomatoes, and onions in front of the house. She looked toward the small wooden cage at the corner of the house. Inside were 2 chickens, her only remaining livestock. They were supposed to be for Christmas, but Christmas was far. Her eyes lingered on the chickens, then on her son. She knew what she had to do. She smiled faintly and began to pack her peppers and tomatoes into a basin. She covered it with a net and placed it under the bench. Then she went to the chicken cage. She reached in and pulled both of them out, one in each hand. Her heart ached. These chickens were like savings. But at that point, her son's future mattered more than any chicken. Daniel walked up to her, looked at the chickens in her hands. "Mummy, are you going to sell them?" She didn't answer. She only smiled and asked him to follow her. They began the long walk to the school compound. As they approached the school, some pupils stared at them. Mama Dan walked with her head high despite the whispers. The headmistress had just finished addressing some teachers and was about to go to her office when they saw her and approached her. "Good morning, Ma," Mama Dan greeted with a slight bow. "I'm Daniel's mother, the boy who was sent home this morning. Ma, I didn't come with a school fee because I don't have it. I brought these 2 chickens instead." The headmistress stared at her in disbelief. "You brought what?" "Chickens," she said, lifting them slightly. "They're healthy. They're all I have." There was a pause. Then Mama Dan took a deep breath, and her voice broke as she continued. "Please, Ma, I know this is not how school fees are usually paid, but I beg you, I couldn't sit and watch my only son cry every day because he can't go to school. My husband died 3 years ago. Since then, I've been alone, raising my son the best way I can." She sniffled and wiped her eyes with the edge of her wrapper. "I sell pepper and tomatoes in front of our house. Some days, we don't even sell enough to eat. These 2 chickens are the last things I own. I was keeping them for Christmas. But Christmas can wait. My son's education cannot." She held the chickens out again with both hands. "I know it's not money, Ma, but I'm begging you, please accept them. Please let him return to school. I have nothing else, but I have hope, and I believe if you help me today, God will bless you for it," she said as she quickly went down on her knees, still sobbing. The headmistress was stunned to silence as the chickens fluttered softly in her arms. At that moment, a black SUV pulled into the school compound. It stopped gently by the flower bed. The school gatekeeper rushed to open the passenger door. Out stepped a tall man in a crisp dark blue suit and polished shoes. His name was Chima Rowland, a billionaire businessman and philanthropist who had come for a brief courtesy visit to the school, where he once donated a block of classrooms. He was closely followed by his personal assistant. He and his PA walked toward the headmistress, but slowed when they saw the scene before them. A woman kneeling in dust, crying, holding 2 live chickens in her hands, a sad-looking boy beside her, and a headmistress standing with her arms folded. Roland stopped. "What's going on here?" he asked quietly. The headmistress turned, startled. "Oh, good afternoon, sir. You're welcome. I didn't realize you had arrived already." Roland raised a hand, stopping her politely. "It's fine, please. What's happening here?" The headmistress hesitated. "Sir, this woman is trying to pay her child's school fees with chickens. It's a bit unusual. I'm just an employee. I can't accept it," she replied politely. Roland said nothing. His gaze remained fixed on the woman kneeling before him. "Madame, please stand up," he said softly. Mama Dan looked up in confusion. Sir? "Please, stand up," he repeated. She slowly got to her feet, still holding the chickens, her body trembling. "What's your name?" he asked. "My name is Nungozi, sir. This here is my son, Daniel." The billionaire looked at the boy, then back at the mother. He noticed the cracked sandals, the faded uniform, the desperation in her eyes. "And you brought chickens because you couldn't afford the school fees," she nodded quickly, amid tears. "Yes, sir. I've tried everything. I don't want my boy to grow up without education. Even if all I have are these chickens, I was ready to give them. If this is what it takes, then so be it." There was a moment of silence. Then Roland sighed deeply and turned to his PA. "Tunda," he said calmly, "please go with this woman and her son to the bursar's office. Pay his school fees for this term." "Yes, sir." The PA responded instantly, already reaching into his tablet case for the card holder. Then he gave a respectful nod and turned to Mama Dan. "Ma, please follow me." Mama Dan looked overwhelmed, unsure if she was dreaming. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand and grabbed Daniel's hand as they followed the PA toward the administrative block. Roland turned to Madame Uche. "Now, let's step into your office. I'd like to speak with you about some things." "Yes, sir," she said quickly, straightening her shoulders as they both walked toward the main building. About 20 minutes later, Daniel was back in class. His school bag finally hung where it belonged. His classmates smiled and welcomed him, and for the first time in weeks, he smiled back with quiet pride. His mother, on the other hand, went back to where Roland now stood under the shade of a mango tree, speaking with the headmistress again after their meeting in her office. As she approached, she dropped to her knees again. "Sir, God bless you. Thank you, sir. I don't know how to say it. I am just grateful. May you never lack—" He helped her up gently. "You've thanked me enough," he said with a smile. "But I'm not done yet." She looked up, confused. "Where do you live?" he asked. "Just by the main road, sir, close to Obiel Street. It's not far." He gestured toward his car. "Come, let me drop you off." Her eyes widened. "Sir? I can't trouble you." "It's no trouble," he said. "Let's go." He opened the car door himself and motioned for her to enter, his PA gently placing the chickens in the boot with a smile. As the car drove off, Mama Dan sat in the car, still stunned, holding her wrapper tightly. Unaware that this was only the beginning of a miracle she never saw coming. The SUV cruised gently along the dusty road that led to Oberle Street. Mama Dan sat silently, her heart beating in a strange rhythm. She still couldn't believe what was happening. Just a few hours ago, she was a desperate mother clutching 2 chickens, begging for her son's school fees. Chima Roland didn't say much as the driver followed Mamadan's direction. His mind was filled with thoughts. There was something about the woman beside him. He didn't know why he felt connected to her in a way. "We are almost there, sir," Mamadan said softly, bringing him out of his thoughts. "Soon." She pointed at a small building ahead. "That's the place, sir." The driver parked gently in front of the house. From the outside, it was nothing special, cracked walls, rusted roofing sheets. Yet, it had a kind of quiet dignity. She stepped out quickly while the PA moved to open the boot, carefully bringing out her 2 chickens from the back seat. He watched her for a moment. Her movements were humble but graceful. "Thank you again, sir," she said. "This is my home." She hesitated, then said shyly, "I know it's small, but would you like to come inside for a moment? Even if it's just to drink water and rest a bit." He smiled kindly. "I'd be glad to." Her face brightened. She opened the door with a slight bow and led him inside. The room was small and warm. One glance told the story of a woman who made the most out of very little. "Please, sir, sit here," she said, bringing forward a plastic chair. He sat with a nod of thanks. Mama Dan moved to a corner and lifted the lid of a clay water pot. She poured water into a stainless cup and brought it to him with both hands. "It's cool," she said gently, "straight from the pot." "Thank you," he replied, receiving it with a smile. He drank slowly, letting the coolness calm him. There was a simplicity to her gesture that touched him deeply. Not just the water, but the quiet honor in the way she served it. He set the cup down on the plastic stool beside him and looked around the room once more. Then he saw something that caught his attention. On the wall, above the small shelf, hung a frame. Inside was a photograph of a man. He stood by a yellow cab, smiling warmly. Under the photo were the words, "Even if life is hard, kindness is free." Roland froze. His heart skipped a beat. He leaned forward, staring at the photo. He stood slowly and walked over to it. Every line of the man's face came back to him like a memory unlocked. His voice was low, barely above a whisper. "It's him," he muttered. Then, turning to Mama Dan, he asked, "Who is this?" She smiled, unaware of the storm inside him. "My late husband, he used that sentence all the time when he was alive." He nodded slowly. "You said—" What was his name again? "I Kechuku," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. "I Kechuku Okoye." Roland placed his hand on his chest. The name, the face, the words, it was all clear now, but he said nothing more. Instead, he looked at her with deep respect and said, "Thank you for the water and for letting me come in." "You're welcome, sir. You've done more for me today than anyone ever has," she replied sincerely. He smiled once more and said, "I'll be in touch." Then he made his way towards the door. She followed him to the door and watched as he walked back to the SUV. He turned once to glance at the house again, then entered the car and his driver drove off, leaving behind a quiet cloud of red dust. Inside the vehicle, Roland sat back in his seat, staring out the window, his hands clasped tightly. Few years had passed, so many things had changed. But kindness never dies. And now he had found the family of the man who saved his life. It was time to return what was given. They got to the hotel where he had lodged for the period he would be in the village. 2 days passed, but Chimo Roland could not sleep properly. Even if life is hard, kindness is free. That sentence repeated itself in his mind like a prayer. So, on a calm Thursday morning, he asked his driver to take the day off. Then he drove himself to Obel Street. When he arrived at the house, Mama Dan was outside, picking okra from a small backyard garden behind her compound. She looked up, surprised. "Sir," she gasped, dropping the small basket of okra and wiping her hands on her wrapper. "Good morning, sir. I wasn't expecting—" "I hope I'm not disturbing you," he said gently. No, sir, you're very welcome. Please, come and sit inside." She led him into the house again, this time more comfortable than before. He sat on the same plastic chair, and she offered him water again, which he accepted with gratitude. There was silence. He looked around again at the photo on the wall, but said nothing. Then he asked the question that had brought him back. "You mentioned the man in the photo was your husband?" "Yes, sir. His name was Ikechukwu." He nodded slowly. "If you don't mind, can you tell me more about him?" She smiled, then looked down, eyes misting over. "My husband was a good man," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "Very kind, very honest. Too honest, in fact. He always put others before himself. We used to live in the city. He was a taxi driver. We weren't rich, but we were managing. He worked hard morning till night, always smiling, always content. One night he didn't come home early. I was worried. By 10 p.m. I was already outside, pacing. When he finally came back, he looked so tired. The taxi had bloodstains on the seat. He told me Fuma had finished work for the day and was on his way home when he saw someone lying by the roadside. It was raining heavily that night. He said he couldn't just drive past him, so he stopped. The man was half dead. Ikechukwu carried him into the taxi and rushed him to the nearest hospital. When they refused to treat the man without a deposit, he gave them everything he had made that day. Everything. The next day, he took the taxi back to the owner, who had expected him to return the car the previous night. The man was angry. My husband explained what has happened, and it made the man even more furious. He said my husband had no right to carry a half-dead man in the car, that it could have brought police trouble. He told Ikechukwu he was reckless, that he endangered the business. He fired him on the spot. No warning, just like that. That was how my husband lost the job. That moment broke us. He tried to get another job, but nobody was willing to hire him. We had some savings, and he had a piece of land here in the village that his father left him. So we moved here. With that small money, he built this one-room house. He started farming while I continued with the petty trading I'd started in the city. It wasn't much, but we were together, and somehow we were happy. Then one day he was bitten by a snake in his farm. He had gone to check the trap he set in the bush. He didn't return on time. People went looking and found him lying by a tree, unconscious. By the time they carried him home, it was too late. My Daniel was just 7 years old. I have been left to shoulder the burden alone. I work really hard, just that I earn very little. She concluded in tears. Roland closed his eyes briefly, fighting back the sting. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He stood slowly and walked toward the picture again and stared at it, this time with deeper pain. Then he turned to Mama Dan and gave a gentle nod. I was the man he picked up that night, the one bleeding by the roadside. That was me. Mama Dan's hands trembled as she lowered herself slowly onto the chair, staring at him in disbelief. He sat down, his voice breaking as he began. It was raining heavily that night and I was driving home. I had just turned into my street not far from my house when a black car suddenly swerved and blocked the road in front of me. At first I thought it was someone who lost control in the rain. But then 3 men jumped out. They had masks on. I didn't even have time to reverse. Before I could reach for the door, they opened it and dragged me out into the mud. One of them hit me on the head with something heavy. I fell. Then they started kicking me. They dealt with me like I was not human. Then I passed out. I guess they thought I had died, so they left me. When I woke up, I was lying in the mud by the roadside. They had taken my car, my phone, my wallet, everything. My suit was torn. The rain hadn't stopped. It was cold. My bones felt broken. And it was late, so most cars had parked. The street was quiet, lonely, no one around. But eventually, I started to hear sounds. A few cars passed, but none stopped. Some slowed down. I heard people inside say things like, "Is he drunk?" Others just stared. One person actually took out a phone and he took a photo. Maybe he thought it was funny. Maybe for social media, I don't know. I remember thinking, so this is it? This is how I will end my life. And then when I had already given up, someone ran toward me. I saw his shadow first. He didn't shout or ask questions. He just bent down, checked if I was breathing, and lifted me. Me, with all my blood and dirt, into the back seat of his taxi. He drove straight to the hospital. When they refused to treat me without payment, he dropped the only money he had on the counter and begged them to save me. I didn't even know who he was. The next day my family found me. The hospital had used the hospital line to call my brother after I managed to read out his number. 2 days later, your husband came back. I managed to sit up in bed. I thanked him. I said I would never forget him. I asked for his name. He just smiled, shook my hand and said, "My name is Ikichuku. Even if life is hard, kindness is free." That sentence has remained stuck in my head ever since. I tried to give him money. I begged him to take it. He refused. I asked for his phone number. He said, "Don't worry, just stay well." And he left. For years I searched. I sent people to look for Ikichuku at every bus and cab stations in that area. I described him to taxi drivers. Nobody knew him. Nobody had heard of a man like that. I thought he was an angel. But the story didn't end that night. After I recovered, the police called me. They had arrested some boys who got into a fight in a bar. Apparently, they had worked for someone who refused to pay them their full balance. They turned out to be the same men that had attacked me. The man who sent them was bidding for the same contract as me at the time, a government logistics contract. He saw me as a threat, so he paid those boys to remove me permanently. But I didn't die because your husband saved me. And after the investigation, the man was arrested. His own people testified against him. He was blacklisted, and I won that contract. That one contract changed everything for me. It gave me the capital I needed. I opened offices, I built fleets, I hired staff, I grew, but deep down, I always knew. My life didn't start with that contract. It started with your husband's kindness. Since I couldn't locate him, I started an NGO to support the less privileged around me. He looked her in the eyes again. I'm standing here today Because of him, he concluded. The room was heavy with silence and grief. Mama Dan dropped to her knees slowly and raised her eyes to the ceiling. God, you see everything, even when we think no one is watching. Just as the silence between Roland and Mama Dan stretched gently, filled with shared emotion, they heard footsteps outside. "Mummy," a familiar voice called. It was Daniel running into the compound with his school bag bouncing on his back. He stopped at the doorway, looking from his mother to Roland. "Good afternoon, sir," he greeted politely, confused by the tears on both their faces. Roland stood up slowly. "I'll be going now. We'll talk again. Very soon," he said softly. He smiled at Daniel. "You're a smart boy. Stay close to your mother and study hard." Daniel nodded. "Yes, sir." Without another word, Roland stepped outside, walked to his car, and drove away. 4 days later, a car pulled up in front of the compound. A young man stepped out, neatly dressed in trousers and a simple shirt. He carried a brown envelope and a soft smile. "Good afternoon, Ma," he said politely. She stood quickly, wiping her hands on her wrapper. "Good afternoon. I was sent by Mr. Chimmer Roland," the man introduced. "He asked me to give this to you personally." He handed her the envelope, bowed slightly, and returned to the car. Before she could even ask questions, the car reversed quietly and drove away. She stood there, puzzled, holding the envelope to her chest for a moment. Then, slowly, she walked into the house. Inside, she sat on the bed, called Daniel to sit beside her, and opened the envelope. It was a neatly folded letter. She read aloud slowly, her voice trembling. "Dear Mrs. Ngozi Okoye, some things in life are too sacred for fanfare. Your husband gave me life when I had lost all hope of survival. Now I want to give something back to your family, not as a favor, but as a long overdue thank you. Daniel has been awarded a full scholarship under my foundation. The scholarship covers his entire schooling journey from primary school to university, including tuition, books, uniforms, school materials, and medical care. All arrangements have been made starting next term. You will be contacted by our education advisor for school options closest to your preferred location. Also enclosed is a cheque of 1.5 million naira, a small support fund, meant to help you breathe easier as you prepare for what's ahead. I know this is only the beginning, but I wanted to start gently. Yours in deep gratitude, Chima Roland." Mama Dan blinked. Then she saw the cheque and covered her mouth, stunned. "Mummy?" Daniel whispered. She turned to look at him, eyes shining with tears. She smiled softly, one tear escaping down her cheek. "Your future is now in God's hands, and God has used someone to answer our prayers." He hugged her tightly, and she held him just as firmly. Later that evening, Mama Dan stood outside her house, looking at the sky. The cool breeze brushed against her cheeks. Her heart felt strangely light. She wasn't rushing to the market. She wasn't calculating how to divide 1 tuber of yam into 3 meals. She was calm. Inside, Daniel had fallen asleep over his book. On the wall, the same photo of Ikechukwu remained. She walked over and touched the edge of the frame. "My husband, you didn't die in vain," she whispered. Far away, Roland sat in his study that night, watching the rain fall quietly. He had returned to his house in the city. He pulled open a drawer and took out something he had kept for years, a small hospital receipt with Ikechukwu's signature on the corner. He smiled through and said, "You saved me, Ikechukwu. And now, your kindness is still saving lives. I will make sure your wife and son never taste poverty again. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please like, share, and leave a comment. I will be back. Bye for now.